Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the world. I hope that you are having a kind day today. Welcome to this opening session of the Global Green Growth Week 2023, GGGI's flagship knowledge sharing conference, hosted for the 7th time this year. This year, our event is structured around the 4-dimension goals outlined in GGGI's Green Growth Index, which encompass efficient and sustainable resource use, natural capital protection, fostering green economic opportunities, and promoting social inclusion. This year, we are also putting a special emphasis on young people around the world, who are the leaders of today and tomorrow. We have close to 47 sessions throughout the week, and we hope that you will find something meaningful to you. This opening session serves as the platform for GGGI's Director General and the GGGI senior team to share insights, reflect on past achievements, and share our role in advancing green growth transitions that is people-centered and is just for all. To begin, I would like to start with a video message from His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, GGGI's President and Chair of the Council and the Assembly.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 7th Annual Global Green Growth Week. I speak to you today with a sense of urgency because our one and only planet is facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions. The theme for this year, fast-tracking transformative climate action, underscores the grave and urgent situation. For many years, I have been emphasizing a simple truth about the climate crisis. There is no plan B because there is no planet B either. The opportunity to save the planet is not for the distant future. Now is the time. We need everyone to join and help tackle the climate crisis, and the policies and solutions need to meet the urgency and severity with boldness and innovativeness. The year 2023 was marked yet again with record-breaking temperatures and severe weather events. To keep global temperatures below the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold and avert the worst, we must act swiftly and boldly. Therefore, I'm proud that Global Green Growth Week brings together policymakers, thought leaders, investors, and innovators from the public and private sectors from all over the globe to discuss solutions to the climate crisis. And I'm also excited that there will be a special spotlight on young people and their pivotal role in a greener future. Much like the least developed countries and small island developing states, young people will be the most impacted, despite having contributed to the problems the least. They therefore have every right to contribute to the solutions, and their creativity and passion will be invaluable assets. With the conclusion of the first global stocktake, discussions to operationalize loss and damage and other important issues, this year's COP28, which is just weeks away, will be critically important, and I hope the Global Green Growth Week will prove to be a helpful stepping stone to build momentum, hone ideas, and much more. The challenges before us are immense, but so is our collective potential. Let us seize this moment and work together to fast-track transformative climate action. Together, we can secure a safer greener, and more sustainable world for ourselves and for generations to come. I wish you my best wishes for very productive discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope you were inspired by His Excellency Ban Ki-moon just as much as I am always inspired by him. The first speaker for this session is Dr. Frank Grisberman, the Director General of GGGI. In his role, he has been dedicated to expanding GGGI support to our member states as they transition toward a sustainable economic growth model that is both environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive. He brings with him over 30 years of experience in tackling the challenge of environmental sustainability and poverty reduction, having worked with prominent international organizations and philanthropic foundation. He was initially appointed as Director General of GGGI in 2016. His extensive expertise and commitment make him a valuable leader to all of us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mona. So what I was going to say is that I'm not so much bringing 30 years of experience, I'm bringing 7 different GGG week experiences. I think I'm one of the few people who actually attended all of them. The first one was in Jeju in September 2016, just a few weeks before I joined on the 1st of October. And indeed, it was a similar event, but GGI was quite a different organization at the time. My introduction here today is based on my DG progress report that I've written for the Council and Assembly. I write that a couple times a year, once in the spring and once for the October meetings, usually to focus on what happens sort of in that 6-month period. But because, in fact, this particular Council and Assembly meeting will also be the last of my tenure, the last of my 2 terms, because my contract ends on the 1st of October 2024, just before the next Council and Assembly meeting. I used the opportunity to have a bit more of an overview perspective of the last 7 years. So I'm sharing with you a little bit the perspective of where we have come from and where GGI is at right now. First, just, well, a few of the points we'll be walking through, starting with the climate crisis. If you were here the last hour, that is what we were all talking about. But then the remainder of it, I will be focusing not so much what the COP28 presidency is going to do about it, but what we in GGI are doing about it. Yes, the crisis. September was the hottest month on record. It's ridiculous. You know, I've been working on the climate crisis, even though we didn't call it like that 40 years ago when I started to work on climate change. But at that time, it was something that we thought would affect us a couple 100 years from now. And then it became something that would affect our grandchildren or our children. And of course, it's gone much faster, the actual change in the climate, than any of our models predicted. And the actions that we've been talking about for as long, for the last 40 years, have been going much slower than any of these reports that we've been showing for the last 40 years have been calling for. That is indeed, I usually say there's not very much that keeps me up at night, but this does. I have children. I would like them to have the wonderful life I've been having a chance to have, but I find it difficult to explain to my 14-year-old that we will still have a livable planet when he gets to my age. So there is really a climate crisis. The global stocktake, even though in the past hour we heard only all those positive things that politicians and climate negotiators are supposed to say, is a failing report card. It shows that emissions are going up, not down. The consequences of the climate crisis are absolutely everywhere, whether it's in forest fires in Sweden or typhoons in countries that we work in. I don't understand, to be honest, why politicians faced with all those enormous consequences can't deliver more climate action. But if there is one consensus that you read in all those reports, whether it's the IPCC 1.5 degrees, the IPCC 6th report, every report that you see that it is not that we're lacking solutions. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's not that we can't imagine what the world should be doing, but we just need to rapidly and massively scale up the pace of climate action. That's what our external environment is telling us. So then going to GGI, I think we can say that that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow as rapidly as we can, and we're trying to scale up our action. That is what we're always talking about. Sometimes the council tells us, can we really grow so fast? Are we not spreading ourselves too thin? I would like to turn it around and say, from the perspective of what we just talked about, from the perspective of our external environment, how can we not? How can we not push as hard as we can, grow as fast as we can, and deliver as much climate action as we, from our small perspective, can? I think that's what we're doing. I think that's why this organization has pretty much doubled the last few years. That's why all that money that we've been mobilizing should now be put to good action, delivering results. And really, we can stop worrying a bit about resource mobilization. Yes, in some countries of GGI, the future isn't as bright as for the organization as a whole. So we should make sure that all of our colleagues will have the same job security. But for an organization as a whole, I can tell you that by the end of this year, we will have money in hand for another 3 years of expenditures. We will have signed contracts for all our earmarked projects. And we don't exactly know what we'll hear about our core replenishment drive, but I'm optimistic that this week on Thursday, we'll have a reasonable increase in our core resources as well, which means the money is there. So we can focus on delivery. Well, what journey have we had? How did we come to where we are? What are our strengths? In my perspective, the key things we did from when I arrived here, at least in 2016, was first to decentralize, to empower our country teams, to give our country teams more of the means to write their own proposals rather than writing all of them in headquarters, to make sure that our country teams became business units, if you like, responsible for liaising with governments, writing proposals, and then implementing those proposals. We've also focused on putting enough tools online so that rather than processing very large piles of DG decision memos that really literally still arrived on my desk in paper in 2017. Now it's hard to remember, but now we complain that some of our tools aren't perfect enough. But basically, when you take your laptop, when I travel, I open my laptop somewhere in a hotel, I can pretty much run all of our systems from our laptop online. And of course, that was huge when the pandemic hit and we could all simply work from home or work from our laptops. That has been a big investment. I know not all of our systems are perfect and we keep improving them, but by and large, we've created a pretty solid infrastructure that we can work with. And you'll see here, I'll have to speed it up a little bit, but I think this slide expresses a bit of what I think we did to put ourselves in a decent position. And yes, I still believe that our niche, in the shortest way of saying it, is that we are embedded, trusted advisors. That doesn't mean that in some countries where the government doesn't have an office for us, we can't rent another office, but it means that we're not giving up on being embedded. We'll go back to the government and say we do need an office, and we need to have places to be with the government, be inside the government. That, I think, is a critical part of, you could indeed almost say, our DNA, as opposed to a lot of development partners that sit in their offices and have to call up and say, can we have an appointment next week to come see you? We see our government partners every day. And yes, in not all cases, but in many cases, they really trust us. That shows in all the meetings we have, that shows in many of the evaluations. And it means that we can work with them to deliver results. Here in this slide, we've tried to give a bit of an overview of what our key features are. But altogether, I think, yeah, we are like the United Nations and not. We're also rather more agile, less bureaucratic, and I think a bit more willing to be innovative and take risks. So that is, I think, our niche. That hasn't really changed, and I don't see any reason to make any major changes in that at all. All right, so moving a little bit, not to the last 7 years, but to this year. This year, we have made a big effort to not just focus on resource mobilization, but shift our attention to quality of delivery. And I'm very glad that in lots of the conversations we have with the country teams, that message is coming across, and that we are really focusing on making sure we identify risks early, that we focus on reporting on all our projects, and that we, all together focus on a whole series of measures that say, okay, how do we make sure that all that money that people are entrusting to us is really used to deliver big results? And we are delivering big results. We have innovative projects that are delivering. Here I'm mentioning 4 in this particular slide. Of course, not everybody even knows that we were a key part of making that debt for nature swap in Ecuador happen, because in the end it was Credit Suisse who put the blue bond in the market, and it was quite a few other financial parties that gave all the interviews. But we know, Mariana knows, that one of our Mexican colleagues went on special assignment, Valeria, to sit in the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Environment last year to help the Ecuador government put all that together. And that experience is now translating in working in, I think it's 5 or 6 other countries to work on similar debt for nature swaps. And whenever we talk about that, like with the new Colombian ambassador, and say, look, that actually saved the Ecuador government $1 billion in external debt, they can barely believe it. And at the same time, there were some really solid commitments made by the government to increase nature conservation in the Galapagos Marine Park. Well, and then I'm looking at Mariana now, who's visiting us from Mexico, who was very proud that FIRA, the kind of Mexican Agricultural Development Bank, issued what I think is the world's first resilience bond, and that we would really like to see delivered in many other countries as well. So yes, we are managing to come up with quite innovative new things. I think I saw Nishant as well there in the back, who was very proud that the Himachal Pradesh government was pushed with a little bit of leverage from the World Bank to accept what you could call a second order power sector reform, to really start dealing with higher levels of renewable energy integration, and to start dealing with, what is needed to really decarbonize the power sector longer term. That's another subject that we hope we can do in many other places. And finally, good example from Africa, the finance, what is their name again? Africa Finance, AFC, Africa Finance Corporation. They came up with this idea for an investment fund on resilient infrastructure, and we helped them deliver that. 200 and I think $30 or $40 million from DCF, and another 500 million in co-financing for that very large fund. All of these are examples that we hope to replicate in years to come. And all of these kind of big successes mean that, you know, when I arrived here, you will not believe me, but our strategy 2020 said that GGI's goal was to mobilize $30 million in green and climate finance. Like nothing. And we have gradually bumped that target up. And this year, I think we'll do well over $1 billion. We had done over $1 billion in the first 6 months. And that means that we can now indeed increase our ambition further and further, because we do have new and innovative instruments to do so that we believe can deliver more and more. Here, you just have a handful for, in fact, new instruments that either we put in place, the Korea Green New Deal Fund, that's already old. It's already its 2nd year of operation. Then we have the Sustainable Finance Trust Fund that actually was established this year. And yes, all the way on the right, you'll see the fund that we're working on to come into action by 2025, a public-private partnership. And if Fenella was in the room, she probably has colleagues here from the carbon pricing unit. Then you should ask them what they have done this year to operationalize the carbon transaction facility, because they're ready to say, okay, we think we'll have at least $500 million in actual carbon buying funds in our carbon transaction facility, plus another 50 million or so in capacity building funds. I mean, those funds that GGI can use to work with developing countries to come up with transactions. So yes, I am positive and optimistic that we have what it takes to come up with innovative solutions and that we can then scale those up. I'm really proud of all that work. All right, so this year we did a quick review of our roadmap. That was a big job for the strategy department and a number of working groups. Just to remind you, Strategy 2030 was approved by our council, so we can't change that without involving the council. So then we did a roadmap to 2025, which was the management's plan to implement the first 5 years of Strategy 2030. So that we can also approve the revision of that as a management team, which is what we did in October. And here, if you haven't seen it yet, it's worth having a look. This slide summarizes the 3 key things that we changed. First and foremost, we increased the ambition of green and climate finance and split it into infrastructure and sustainable finance instruments, basically doubled the ambition there again. And then we also revised the definitions of some of our strategic outcomes. And of course, because the targets went up and because the multipliers changed in definition, that means we now have new strategic outcome targets. And as a consequence, we also made a number of changes to our corporate results framework. This was in a way the first step. Sometime next year, 2024, 2025, we'll do a more formal external evaluation of how Strategy 2030 is progressing. And that then also means that by 2025, when there will be a new Director General appointed next year, that person will have a chance to do a revision of Strategy 2030. So the cycle is working quite nicely. All right, wrapping up almost this week. Obviously, we're in the middle, we're kicking off Global Green Growth Week here. A great opportunity, yes, as GGI staff, but particularly also for our members to share their successes. And I hope that we are giving many of our representatives from our member and partner countries a chance to share their experience here. That, in a way, is the critical goal of Global Green Growth Week. I often say, look, it's not so much for us GGI staff to say, what have we done? Rather, we should shine the spotlight on the successes, the plans, the ambitions of our members. So that is what I hope we'll be doing this week. And yes, then on Thursday afternoon, we have quite an important meeting with representatives from our donor countries. A year ago, we started the core replenishment drive. an effort to boost our core resources to be more in line with the earmarked resources that are growing so rapidly. And we already know that we'll get some good news from the Republic of Korea, and we're hoping to have some additional good news. So yes, all of you in country teams that have seen the initial request for budgets for 2024, the first version, we just kept the core resources at the level they are in 2023, because we didn't want to steal any possible thunder from our donor countries. But when we have an update on Thursday, we hope that we will then be able to say, okay, the revised, hopefully increased expectations for core in 2024 and years to come will make all life a little bit nicer for all the teams that are looking for increased core resources. And finally, Thursday evening, our Council and Assembly meeting. A lot of that stuff, I like to say, our governance is really boring. And I like it like that. You don't want the kind of governance that some international organizations have, where people argue for 8 hours over the agenda or other small things. Ours, turns out, most of the time, our council members are happy with what we do. So most of what we are proposing to them, we have consulted them, we've worked with the MPFC, we have given them a chance to comment in our e-consultations. So we expect very little fireworks. Sometimes a little bit, somebody coming up and saying, we're really not ready to take this decision or that. But we're hoping that they are ready to take the key set of decisions that we're proposing to them this time, which is kind of technical. It's the definitions on contributing members and putting in place a donor consultation group, but also some linked issues like no longer having a preferential overhead rate for our contributing members and agreeing how we will manage, in essence, our overhead in terms of, how we will pay for the organization. And that set of decisions together, if they pass through the Council and Assembly, I believe will put the organization on a pretty solid footing in terms of its overall financing. So they're actually quite important decisions. Boring, but important. And hopefully they will be approved. All right, well, that leaves me with only one final slide. And that is to say, we are very aware, all of us, that all of the stuff I was just describing is obviously what all of us work so hard on. It's what some people can't sleep over or feel that they really work too hard, which is one reason why this year we not only focus on quality of delivery, but also on all the ways and means that people can stay healthy and have a decent work-life balance, because that's in the end what we want. It was Helena who coined the phrase, the goal of GGI, maybe not something I would have come up with, but I'm happy to repeat. And it is a good way of summarizing that in the end, the key asset that GGI have is our staff, our consultants, our interns, the whole group of people that together make all this possible. And I have to say, I normally try to be kind of modest, and I think that's good. But I'm also actually very, very proud of everything that we achieve at GGI. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, and huge appreciation to what you do every day. I think I speak for everyone at GGGI that we are quite proud of being under your leadership. I know you're one of the persons who never sleeps, and sometimes perhaps we wish a little bit that our systems go down. But we are immensely proud of what you have achieved and what we all have achieved here. I think climate action is in action at GGGI. So thank you so very much. Now we are going to move to the theme of the event around which we also using the Green Growth Index. So I would like to introduce Dr. Lilibet Acosta-Miklik, who currently serves as the Principal and Deputy Director of the Climate Action and Inclusive Development Division here at GGGI. I think she's online now. She joined GGGI in 2018, and she has actually developed one of the Green Growth Performance Measurement Initiative, and she was managing that initiative when she joined. In her capacity, she oversees the development of the Global Green Growth Index and simulation tools at GGGI, and her valuable expertise really contributes significantly to GGGI's efforts globally. Lilibeth, please start your presentation. I think everyone is quite curious to see what the data tells us today.
Thank you, Mona. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. So, as Mona said, I'm Lilibeth Acosta, the Program Manager for Green Growth Performance Measurement, responsible for the development and application of the Green Growth Index, as well as the other tools linked to it, like the Green Growth Simulation tools. I was given the title for this presentation, What the Data Tells Us, but don't worry, I will not bore you with numbers and figures, but I will tell you a story. So with that, the content of my presentation will include just a brief introduction of the framework for those who are not familiar with it, and inform you about the growing network of the Green Growth Index, a few highlights of the results, and more importantly, I think what's important are the national applications, the rolling out of the index at the national level. So this is the framework of the Green Growth Index. It has 4 dimensions: efficient and sustainable resource use, green economic opportunities, social inclusion, and natural capital protection. Each dimension has 4 pillars. For example, green economic opportunities. The pillars include green investment, green trade, green employment, and green innovation. Depending on the application of the Green Growth Index framework, the indicators that are applied for each pillar will be very different. So we have different sets of indicators for Global Green Growth Index and different sets of indicators for national green growth indices. But even at the national level, the indicators for these pillars are different depending on the indicators that the national experts have chosen to be included in their Green Growth Index. So let me just remind you that the framework design has gone into a very intensive consultation with experts at the regional level and as well as international level, particularly experts from international organizations. So we started in 2017 and the framework was completed only in 2019. And so the first Global Green Growth Index report was published in 2019. But our collaboration with the experts did not stop there. Until now, we are collaborating with the experts who worked with us from 2017 to 2019. And in updating the Green Growth Index report, we have also recently invited experts from scientific community, particularly IPCC and IPBES networks, to also help us in updating the green growth indicators of the Global Green Growth Index. It's because until now, we are trying to improve the indicators, particularly the proxy variables, which we have identified in the past years. So for example, this year, we have an important collaboration with the experts because one of the dimensions of the Green Growth Index, green economic opportunities, remain to be challenging in the past years because we only have one indicator per pillar. And so it has as compared to the other dimensions, it has very little number of indicators. And that is a bit problematic in some cases. So this year we have suggested indicators where we monitored the data availability. And this year we have good databases to use for those indicators. And the results that you see here are the ranking provided by the experts. So what does the data tell us? So what I would like to emphasize to you is, for example, in the past years, green economic opportunities is the dimension where the scores are very low. So Could it be because there's only one indicator for each pillar in this dimension? Or is it because they are really, the countries are really performing badly on this? So for us to really assess that, we are trying to include more indicator this year. But I think also generally, this is dimension where most countries in different regions are still lagging behind. This is also the dimension where SDG indicators are very hard to find. So at the national application, last year we have published the report for Zambia Green Growth Index, and the results are available in our website for this index. And the results for Zambia tells us that they are in the middle. So they are performing only moderately with a score of 49.41. So what is the data telling us? Actually, it's not the GGI who's trying to tell the national experts what this data are telling them. Because when we work with the government, we try not only to have them identify the indicators for their index, but we also ask them to interpret the results. But of course, the GGI try to provide the technical support for them to do that. We capacitate them to do that. But at the end of the day, what's inside the report, the assessment that you see in the reports are actually coming from the national experts themselves. So we are actually doing a very intensive collaboration with the national experts, doing lots of participatory activities in order to ensure that the government has the ownership of the National Green Growth Index, because the indicators represented there are those indicators they think are relevant for the context, and the assessments that get into that report are actually also based on their own assessment. So that's why for the Zambia Green Growth Index last year, they are using it to guide the development of their green growth strategy. This year, we continue to develop and apply Green Growth Index for other countries, for example, for Lao PDR, Kenya, and Ghana. For Lao PDR, it's actually very interesting. We started last year, but we are still working until now with the government, because remember, we are working with lots of ministries. For example, for Zambia, there were like 80 experts from for at least 20 ministries and line agencies. The same for Lao PDR. There are lots of ministries working together, and they would like to debate a bit more between themselves or among themselves in order to really find the appropriate indicators for the Green Growth Index, because they want the index to guide the updating of the green growth strategy. For Kenya, there are about, I think, more than 50. No, it's for Ghana. For Kenya, it's about 30 ministries and line agencies working together. We're over 60 experts from those ministries. And they are taking this seriously as well, because the Green Growth Index will be presented during the COP28 as one of their green product, if you like. And for Ghana, they were able to mobilize about 60 experts coming from 54 institutions, including private sector. So it's actually very exciting working with them because they take this seriously. And so we work very closely with them, and we, the same as in Zambia, we let them work together with us. So we don't just let them see what we develop, but we develop everything with them. And another work that the GGI is doing, particularly the Green Growth Performance Measurement Team, is also to work with other institutions to do scoping of green growth indicators. For example, the Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, it's part of a project with Asian Development Bank to do a scoping of green growth indicators to assess green growth transition in Azerbaijan and the Central Asian countries. So these scoping of green growth indicators are very useful as well, because they will then serve as materials to consult with the government later if they want to develop their Green Growth Index. And so with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. Back to you, Mona.
Thank you, Lilibeth. It's amazing how many people you bring together to get to the Green Growth Index. Now I'm gonna quickly turn to Helena McLeod, who is GGGI's Deputy Director General, and also is the head of the Green Growth Planning Implementation Division. She oversees the operations of GGGI's over 40 countries in Latin America, Africa, Asia, Middle East, and the Pacific. She has amazing experience, and it's always a pleasure to listen to you, Helena. So we're really looking forward to telling us how are our programs doing, especially in quality delivery.
Really great to be here. Thank you. So I'm going to go right into it. Why each small effort counts. So in GGGI, we're focused on what I call compound impact. So driving replication of successes, growing our ambition, and empowering our staff, partners, and the people we serve to achieve the most they can. Now, if you think about improving just 1% every day, that means by the end of the year, you will have got 37 times better. 37 times better than on day one. If you do the same, improve 1% per day for 5 years, you actually are 77 million times better. That is compound impact, and that's what we're trying to do in GGGI. And the next few slides will go through very quickly some of those transformational impacts we're seeing across the different regions and countries. So sustainable finance, well, this has really been led and driven from our Latin America and Caribbean team. The Peru bond that we supported in 2021 was the largest green bond, sovereign bond in the world at that time, over $4 billion. And it's helped well over 1 million of the poorest people in Peru. And that has led to a replication effect. So as Frank has mentioned, we've had or supported the largest debt for nature swap globally this year in Ecuador, the first resilience bond in the world in Mexico. And a few weeks ago, I was in Paraguay and we announced the first sovereign green bond in Paraguay. And immediately we had 5 other institutions wanting to do the same. And that is the power of replication. Just last week, the Latin America team with the Caribbean held an adaptation finance forum with ministers and vice ministers, over 10 countries, looking at how to bring that financial impact that GGGI is leading into that adaptation space. And I think one of the most exciting areas is how we can link that to our sustainable landscapes work, where we've had really deep impacts in Colombia and in a number of other countries. We're also accelerating our work on climate smart agriculture. And this picture is from the Africa Climate Summit and our president and chair, who is announcing the Africa Middle East SAFE. Now, this is built on evidence we've gathered from different country projects and programs. In Uganda, we've mobilized over 40 million behind solar-powered irrigation. That has 2 to 5 times the impact on yields without that irrigation. That is really significant. In Senegal, we're getting increases of 30% in yields in our pilot rice projects without the addition of irrigation. And we're looking at how that can be scaled and how we can mobilize 10 billion of investment behind examples like those in Africa with Middle East investment to benefit both food security in Africa and in the Middle East. We're also driving e-mobility. It's amazing in the last couple of years how many initiatives are starting. First, e-mobility in Mexico, e-buses. That's being replicated in different cities in Mexico. In Jordan, the Petra e-bus project. In Bali, we're just starting. In Nepal, in Cambodia, and we have a further pipeline in many other countries. Also, our work on greenpreneurs is fantastic. It really gets down to helping people and growing those small businesses. And we've supported well over 500 green entrepreneurs and SMEs in many different countries in the Pacific, the Caribbean, in Nepal, in Colombia. And I've met many of these people. And it really is transforming lives and communities. Our sustainable landscapes work is something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about everything, but forests did start my career in green growth. And in Indonesia, we've had such a deep partnership with the Indonesian government and working with Norway with their investment. We've supported the protection of over 11 million hectares of rainforest and across various sectors mobilized over $500 million. We're expanding that work to mangroves as well, so not just rainforest. And in Colombia, our work has contributed to reductions in deforestation rates. We've worked on national development plans and provincial development plans, and also livelihood support as alternatives to people to chop down the forest. And we're expanding that work in Ethiopia, working already in Peru and Guyana, and we have a further pipeline. So we've doubled our green investment target by 2025 to $14 billion. It was just 7 billion, and now our target is 14 billion. Wow. And really, I think that is down to Frank's visionary leadership, lifting people's game. So 2 or 3 years ago, Frank set the challenge of the large project challenge. Rather than thinking about small projects of 2 or 3 million, sometimes 10, think about 50 million or more than 50 million. And what that does is it opens people's minds up that suddenly these brains, these amazing brains of ours work differently. And hey presto, actually we can mobilize that amount of money. So my challenge to everybody watching today is think every day how you can become 1% better, which over 5 years will transform into becoming 77 million times better. And that's what we're doing in GGGI. Every single day, we're looking at how we can improve that 1%. And that's how we will protect the planet and the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. Your words are always inspiring. And 77 million is the number, right? So now I'm pleased to invite Ingvild Solvang, the Director and Head of Climate Action and Inclusive Development here at GGGI. With over 20 years of experience, she had made significant contributions to the global dialogue on accelerating climate action and green transition by championing an equity-focused approach. So Ingvild, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Mona and everyone. I am actually here to represent our colleague Sokhna Num, who unfortunately was not able to join today, but it's a great honor to be here, and thank you to our great leaders. I'm also very proud to be working with GGGI and proud to be here today. Now I'm going to talk about justice. We need to talk about justice also when we talk about the green transitions and climate action. We need global justice. We know that 80% of the emissions are coming from G20, the wealthiest countries in the world. And the countries that are the least developed and the small island states are the ones that are the least to blame, but the ones that are suffering the greatest impact. We acknowledge these countries' rights to development, but we also know that the finance is not yet flowing at enough volume to meet their sustainable development needs, particularly into adaptation. We are just getting started on those discussions around the loss and damage fund and what that will look like. And we need to talk about the expansion of energy services to the energy poor people in this world, without running up unsustainable debt burdens for developing countries. And again, mitigation ambitions of the high emitters need to become higher. We need to see more mitigation coming from the richer countries. So we need global climate justice. And GGGI is here to work on that. I think the presentations from both Frank and Helena is showing the work that we do, supporting developing countries and emerging economies, achieving sustainable development, helping unlocking the flows of finance into least developed countries and small island developing states in particular, where the barriers to access to finance are also the greatest. So we have the biggest challenge in those places working with our members. We also need transactional justice. So we know that when we are transitioning towards green, sustainable economies, that transition is happening in an uneven playing field. And if we don't think about how to ensure transactional justice in the transitions, we can actually end up making poor people poorer. So we need to take into account the ways that political and economic opportunities are unequally distributed between people. We just had a speaker from the Sami indigenous group of Norway speak to us today, showing that the building of and the establishment of a windmill farm in Norway, which is a climate action because it reduces emission, has come at the expense of the human rights of the Sami populations who no longer can do their traditional way of livelihood, which is reindeer farming, reindeer herding in these areas of the windmills. We need to focus on workers who need to become ready for the future labor markets. We need to focus on women. It will take us 169 years to close the gender gap, according to the World Economic Forum. Well, we don't have 169 years. I'm not willing to wait that long, nor are my young daughters willing to wait that long. So we need to focus on gender equality in the transition. And we need to focus on youth. And I am just above the peak of my own youth. Barely, and I will still be the one to claim that we need generational justice. We need the youth, and we actually started, I'm actually super happy to see that we actually started the Green Growth Week with a session on loss and damage, where we had our very own Hyeong Choi, who is the UNESCO Youth Ambassador from Korea, speak about the fear and the anxiety of the young people facing loss and damage and the future not being clear when you know that you're growing up to a future that is already experiencing loss and damage to climate change. So we will also towards, I believe it's on Thursday, we will have a youth forum at the Global Green Growth Week, where youth will come together to talk about exactly what climate change means for the young generation and the role that the young generation plays in leadership of this transition that we are talking about. So global justice, transactional justice, generational justice, we will cover all of these elements of a just transition throughout this entire week in many of the sessions that we are planning ahead. So looking forward to that, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ingvild. We do need justice, and again, your words are also quite inspiring, and I know we are forever young. And this morning, the young presenters were really, really inspiring us further to do more. With much ado, I'm gonna now call on Dr. Kyung-Nam Shin, who serves as the Assistant Director General here at GGGI. He also heads the Investment and Policy Solution Division. He has over 30, 40 years experience working with the ADB and the Ministry of Finance and Economy here in Korea. And his expertise and background significantly contributes to GGGI's efforts in sustainable policy solution and green investments.
Thank you,
Thank
Mona.
you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome to GGG Week. As we continue to explore a range of pressing topics today and this week, I'm going to focus on one pivotal issue, such as mobilizing climate investment by delving into GGGI global practice, touching on the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Today, we stand on the bedrock of the Paris Agreement, a landmark treaty that came into existence with a profound sense of urgency and global unity. The objective is very clear. We must limit global warming down to 2 degrees Celsius and keep it at 1.5 degrees Celsius to mitigate catastrophic climate event. The cornerstone of the Paris Agreement lies in nationally determined contribution, NDCs. This commitment by individual country offers a golden ticket, especially for emerging countries and the least developing countries. They provide a platform to transition into what we call green growth, a robust, sustainable, and inclusive development model. GGGI is not merely like sharing statistics and then discussing some theories. We are addressing real, challenging, urgent issues that currently affecting lives and also ecosystems. Climate change is crisis multiplier, and addressing it requires unprecedented level of global collaboration. Before the pandemic, cost of financing our Sustainable Development Goal, SDG, roughly $2.5 trillion per year. Now, after COVID-19, the figure has nearly doubled up, $4 trillion. All this is happening while official development assistance, ODA, simply hovers at around $180 billion annually. It means clearly the public funds alone will not be sufficient. The reason why we need private financing. This image 1% of $400 trillion of the financial asset owned by bank and institute could fully fund the SDG. Nevertheless, public finance will continue to play a critical role to bridge the massive financing investment gap necessary for net zero future. We must strategically deploy the public financing to attract capitals from the private sector. This calls for innovative financial mechanism. Recognize that a primary obstacle to increase private investment is the lack of well-prepared, commercially viable, bankable project. We are expanding its scope of work. Under the guidance of Frank, we are actually more focused on real project development on top of the policy making and then capacity building. Since 2015, GGGI has successfully mobilized an impressive $10 billion in initial commitment for green project. However, we are not stopping there. Our new target is $14 billion by 2025. For this, we are directing our effort to operationalize blended financing facility, which will adopt a combination of private and public sector financing, aiming to mitigate risk and broaden our funding pool. To make this viable, we need more infrastructure projects aligning with proper risk parameters. This is where GGI global programs come into play. Our global programs, multi-country, multi-year project with strong model to replicate success stories for both policy, investment, resource mobilization. Currently, we have around 10 global programs, including methane pledge and hydrogen, green hydrogen, floating solar, and green buildings, and low carbon transport, and circular economy, et cetera, and green bonds, yes. Many of these programs have potential to mobilize roughly $500 million up to $1 billion, while providing opportunities to develop skills, knowledge in specific sector, thematic areas. These programs serve a mechanism to streamline our intervention in more focused, solution-focused areas where we have a track record of success stories. The program as a catalyst bring together public and private funds to develop pipeline of project ready for investment. Let's focus on numerous projects and also confront the challenges lying ahead. The public and private sector must work together to expand finance scope from billions to trillions for green pipeline. Thank you for being here. This is really critical, like dialogue. Together, let's ensure that this week is not just informative, but transformative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that you couldn't have said it better. Let's make sure that this week is transformative.
Yes.
Thank you. So we're closing this session now. Thank you very much. I do check out the other sessions. They starting now, actually. Thank you very much. Thank you for the